Hey everyone, welcome back to Harshilan. So, if you're preparing for AI 102 exam or Azure interviews, this video is for you. In the exam, you usually get a lot of scenario based questions, and sometimes it's not about knowing the answer, it's about understanding how to approach it. That's exactly what we are going to do here. I'll take you through similar questions and explain the logic in a simple way so you can easily understand and remember it. So instead of just memorizing the answer, you'll actually know why that answer is correct, which really helps in the interviews as well. Okay. And if you find this video helpful, please do subscribe to my channel. It really motivates me to create more videos like this. Okay. All right. Let's start with the first question. When creating a prototype board with a board framework emulator, which CLI tool is required? So here, the question is about the initial stage. Basically, before deployment, when you're just testing how your bot conversation will work. Okay, the correct answer is chat down. Now, think it of like this. Before your bot goes live, you want to simulate conversations. So, this chat down helps you to create those conversations in a simple format like a script. Okay, then you can test them in the emulator. So, in the simple term, Chatdown is used for prototyping and testing bot conversation. So, this is not something used in production, okay? It is mainly used for development and testing phase. Now, moving on to next question. Which role-based access control role should be assigned to allow a group to manage keys for Azure Cognitive Services? So here the focus is on permissions. So especially managing keys. Okay. The correct answer is cognitive services contributor. Okay. Now in Azure, roles defines what actions you can perform. So this contributor roles allow you to manage resources completely, including regenerating and accessing keys. But you cannot give access to others. Okay, so if the question is about managing resources or keys, most of the time contributor is the correct choice. Okay, it's a very important concept for interviews as well. Okay, next one. You need to ingest data from diverse sources such as JSON files and an on-premises Oracle database and Azure SQL DB. Which service is best suited for this? Okay, the correct answer is Azure Data Factory. Now, let's understand this properly. Whenever you see multiple data sources and the requirement is to combine, transform, or move data, Azure Data Factory is the go-to service. So you can think it of like a pipeline builder. It connects different data sources, processes the data, and moves it wherever it's needed. So in the real world projects also for ETL or data integration, this Azure Data Factory is heavily used. Moving on to next question. Your company needs to manage 25,000 IoT devices, ensuring each has unique credentials and can send data to multiple endpoints. Which service is recommended? The correct answer is Azure IoT Hub. Now, why IoT Hub? Because IoT Hub is specifically designed for device communication. So, it allows each device to have its own identity and it supports secure communication between devices and the cloud. Also, it has a built-in message routing, so you can send data to multiple endpoints easily. So, whenever you see large number of devices, authentication and routing, think IoT hub. Okay, this is a very common interview question. Now, moving on to next question. In ASP.NET Core logging, which sequence of providers match console, debug, and JSON output respectively? And the correct answer is console, debug, and disk. Okay, this is more of a direct concept. Console logs are used to display logs in terminal, and these debug logs are used during development. And disk provider stores logs as a file. So it's basically about where your logs are being written. Nothing tricky here. Just remember the mapping. Now, moving on to next question. A data scientist reports low performance for a deep learning model on an FSV2 virtual machine. Which VM series would be a better choice? And the correct answer is ND series. Now, this is important. FSV2 VMs are CPU based, but deep learning requires heavy computation, especially for training models. That's where GPU based machines comes in. So ND series VMs provide CPU supports, so which makes them much faster for deep learning workloads. Now, moving on to next question. For a sentiment analysis solution using PDF and JSON inputs, which storage mapping is most appropriate? And the correct answer is option D. Okay, PDF, blob storage, JSON, Azure Data Lake. Now let's understand why. Okay, these PDF files are unstructured data, so this blob storage is perfect for storing them. Okay, and JSON files, especially when processed in batches, are better suited for Azure Data Lake because it is optimized for big data processing. This is a very important concept. Okay, now moving on to next question. What type of service is the text analytics API in terms of infrastructure? And the correct answer is cloud based. Okay, this is straightforward. Azure Cognitive Services, including text analytics, are fully managed cloud services. Okay, you don't install them locally, so you can access them via APIs over the cloud. So always remember, Azure Cognitive Services are nothing but cloud based APIs. Now, moving on to next question. An organization wants to move a large data set of on-premises sensor data to Azure for advanced analytics. Which storage is best? Okay, the correct answer is Azure Blob Storage. Okay, this Azure Blob Storage is designed to store large amounts of unstructured data like logs, sensor data, and images. So, and also it is scalable, cost effective, and it integrates well with the analytics tools as well. So, whenever you see a large data and storage, blob storage is a safe answer. Next, moving on to next question. Which of the following is not a feature of the Face API? Okay, and the correct answer is face morphing. So, Face API supports detection, identification, and verification. Okay, but it doesn't modify or morph faces. So remember, Face API is used for analysis, not for transformation. Now, moving on to next question. You expose an Azure machine learning model as a web service to detect anomalies on IoT edge devices, generating streaming data. Does this solution fulfill the architecture requirement? The correct answer is no. Okay. Now let's understand why. When you're working with IoT edge devices, the processing should be ideally happen close to the devices, means at the edge itself. Okay. But here, exposing model as a web service means the processing is happening in the cloud. Okay, so this creates latency and it is not suitable for real-time edge scenarios. So instead, you should deploy the model directly to IoT edge or use stream analytics with a built-in anomaly detection. Okay. Now, moving on to next question. To improve Azure Cosmos DB performance for large volumes of data with minimal cost, what should you do? And the correct answer is change the partitioning strategy. Now, this is a very important concept. So, Cosmos DB performance is heavily depends on how your data is partitioned. Okay, if partitioning is not done properly, queries will scan large data and it will make it slow. So, instead of increasing request units, which increases the cost, so fixing partitioning improves performance without extra cost. So remember, good partitioning will gives you better performance and it will lower the cost. Okay. Now, let's move on to next question. You configure Azure Monitor for containers to track model accuracy on an AKS deployment. Does this solution work? And the answer is no. Now, this is a tricky one. Azure Monitor for containers is mainly used to track infrastructure metrics like CPU, memory, and performance of containers. But model accuracy is a business or application level metrics. So for that, you need custom logging or application insights. So you need to remember simple rule. That is, infrastructure monitoring is not equal to model performance tracking. Okay. Now let's move on to next question. Which service provide dashboards and monitoring for bot usage and performance? And the correct answer is Azure Application Insights. Now, think it off like this. You want to know how many users are using your bot and what kind of conversations are happening. Okay. Application Insights collect telemetry data like usage, performance, and user interactions. So, it is perfect for monitoring bots. Okay. In interviews, if you see monitoring and usage, you can say it as Application Insights. Okay. Let's move on to next question. In text classification, the category scoring system typically returns which type of value? Okay, the answer is value between 0 and 1. This represents confidence score. For example, zero point 0.9 means high confidence, while zero point 0.2 means low confidence. So, instead of just saying yes or no, the model gives a probability like value. This is a very common concept in machine learning. Moving on to next question. Which of these is a valid use case for the custom vision API? Option A, we have real-time audio translation, and option B, generating text summaries. Option C, scanning documents for PII, and option D, training classifiers for active learning. And the correct answer is training classifiers for active learning. Okay. Now, custom vision is used when you want to build your own image classification model. That means you upload images and you label them and train the model. So, active learning means the model keeps improving as you provide more data. So, custom vision is nothing but you're building your own image model. Okay. Now, moving on to next question. Microsoft's AI ethical principles include fairness, reliability and safety, and inclusiveness. What are the other three? Okay, and the answer is privacy and security, transparency, accountability. So, so these principles ensures that AI is built responsibly. So not just technically but ethically as well. This is an important question for interviews. So especially in behavioral or conceptual round. Okay. Moving on to next question. In a workflow where images are OC read, stored in blob, and processed by Azure ML, which service should orchestrate the processing? And the correct answer is Azure Function. S- So, when an image is uploaded, it automatically triggers processing. Okay, that's why it fits perfectly for this scenario. Okay, so remember, event-based processing means Azure Function. Okay, moving on to next question. Which of the following is a supported output format for the speech translation API? And the answer is audio slash wave. So, so this is a standard audio format used widely. Okay, so whenever you see speech services, wave is a safe and common format. Moving on to next question. You use Azure Logic apps to monitor Twitter for negative text and inappropriate images. Which two cognitive services are needed? And answer is text analytics and content moderator. Okay, so this text analytics is used to analyze sentiment, okay, whether the tweet is positive or negative. And the content moderator is used to detect inappropriate images. So together they handle both text and image analysis. Now let's see next question. Which components are required for real-time system that ingests data and enriches it using custom logic? And the correct answer is Azure Event Hub and Azure Function. Okay. Now, let's break this down. So, this event hub is used for high throughput data ingestion, means it can handle a huge stream of incoming data in real time. Okay, then this Azure functions comes into the picture to process the data. Okay, so it allows you to run custom logic whenever new data arrives. So, the flow is this event hub collects data and this Azure function processes and enriches it. So, whenever you see real time ingestion and custom processing, this combination is perfect. Okay, moving on to next question. You want to moderate specific content without repeatedly scanning identical data. Which API should be used? And the correct answer is term list API. Now, why this term list API? So, So instead of just scanning all content again and again, you can maintain a custom list of terms like blocked words. So then your application just checks against that list. Okay. So it is more efficient and faster. So remember, when you see custom filtering, think about term list API. Okay. Moving on to next question. Which tool is used to deploy a bot developed in C Sharp and .NET to Azure environment? And the correct answer is Azure CLI. Now, Azure CLI is a command line tool used to manage Azure resources. So, when you deploy a bot, you need to create resources and configure settings. So, all of that can be done using Azure CLI. So, in real world DevOps scenarios, also Azure CLI is widely used. So, remember, when you see deployment and automation, think about Azure CLI. Okay, moving on to next question. How can you provide temporary access to video files in Azure storage? And the correct answer is shared access signature is also called as SAS. Okay. Now, SAS allows you to give limited access to a resource for a specific time. So, so instead of sharing your main key, you generate a temporary secure link. This is very useful in real world scenarios where you don't want to expose full access. Okay. So whenever you see temporary and secure access, think about SAS. Okay. Moving on to next question. What is the industry term for voice synthesis? And the correct answer is text to speech. Okay, this is a basic concept. Text to speech converts written text to spoken audio. For example, virtual assistants reading messages. Okay, so whenever you see converting from text to audio, it is nothing but text to speech. Okay, let's see the next question. In which scenario is the speech translation API most effective? And the answer is real time voice translation between speakers. Now, this API is designed for live communication. For example, two people speaking different languages and the system translate in real time. So, it's not for documents, okay, it's for live conversation. So, remember, whenever you see live speech translation, think about speech translation API. Next, moving on to next question. True or false? The text moderation API can automatically block users who submit spam. And the answer is false. Now, this is important because this text moderation API only analyzes and flags content. Okay, it does, so it doesn't take any actions like blocking users. Okay, that logic has to be implemented by your application. Now, let's see the next question. Why do you select a domain when creating a custom vision project? And the correct answer is to optimize the model for specific image types. Now, domains are like pre-configured settings. For example, if you choose food domain, the model is optimized for food related images. So it improves accuracy without extra effort. Moving on to next question. If a person group in Face API reaches its capacity of 10,000, should you move the entries to a large person group? And the answer is yes. Now, person group has a limit of around 10,000 entries. So if you need more, large person group supports much higher capacity. So this is basically a scaling solution. Now, now moving on to the next question. To allow Azure Logic app to access a cognitive services resource, which two values are necessary? And the correct answer is access key and endpoint URL. Now, this is how authentication works. The endpoint tells where the service is and the key gives the permission to access it. So, both are required to make API calls. Alright, that's it for this video. I hope going through these questions actually helped you to understand how to approach similar scenarios in the AI-102 exam and interviews. The more you practice like this, the easier it becomes to identify the right answer. If you found this useful, please do subscribe to Hershey Learn. It really motivates me to create more content like this. Okay, and I'll be sharing more questions and explanations in the next video. So stay tuned. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.